Built into the very structure of the egoic self is a need to oppose, resist, and exclude, to maintain the sense of separateness on which its continued survival depends. So there is me against the other, us against them. The ego needs to be in conflict with something or someone. That explains why you are looking for peace and joy and love, but cannot tolerate them for very long. You say you want happiness, but are addicted to your unhappiness. Your unhappiness ultimately arises not from the circumstances of your life, but from the conditioning of your mind. Do you carry feelings of guilt about something you did or failed to do in the past? Guilt is another attempt by the ego to create an identity, a sense of self. To the ego, it doesn't matter whether that self is positive or negative. The ego, however, personalizes it and says, I did that. And so you carry a mental image of yourself as bad. Jesus' words, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do," also apply to yourself. Relationships. How quick we are to form an opinion of a person, to come to a conclusion about them. It is satisfying to the egoic mind to label another human being, to give them a conceptual identity, to pronounce righteous judgment upon them. Every human being has been conditioned to think and behave in certain ways, conditioned genetically as well as by their childhood experiences and their cultural environment. That is not who they are, but that is who they appear to be. When you pronounce judgment upon someone, you confuse those conditioned mind patterns with who they are. To do that is in itself a deeply conditioned and unconscious pattern. You give them a conceptual identity, and that false identity becomes a prison not only for the other person, but also for yourself. To let go of judgment does not mean that you don't see what they do. It means that you recognize their behavior as a form of conditioning, and you see it and accept it as that. You don't construct an identity out of it for that person. That liberates you as well as the other person from identification with conditioning, with form, with mind. The ego then no longer runs your relationships. As long as the ego runs your life, most of your thoughts, emotions, and actions arise from desire and fear. In relationships, you then either want or fear something from the other person. What you want from them may be pleasure or material gain, recognition, praise, or attention, or a strengthening of your sense of self through comparison and through establishing that you are, have, or know more than they. What you fear is that the opposite may be the case, and they may diminish your sense of self in some way. When you make the present moment the focal point of your attention, instead of using it as a means to an end, you go beyond the ego and beyond the unconscious compulsion to use people as a means to an end, the end being self-enhancement at the cost of others. When you give your fullest attention to whoever you are interacting with, you take past and future out of the relationship, except for practical matters. When you are fully present with everyone you meet, you relinquish the conceptual identity you made for them, your interpretation of who they are and what they did in the past, and are able to interact without the egoic movements of desire and fear. Attention, which is alert stillness, is the key. How wonderful to go beyond wanting and fearing in your relationships. Love does not want or fear anything. If her past were your past, her pain your pain, her level of consciousness your level of consciousness, you would think and act exactly as she does. With this realization comes forgiveness, compassion, peace. The ego doesn't like to hear this, because if it cannot be reactive and righteous anymore, it will lose strength. Without the conceptual barriers, love is naturally present in all human interactions. When you receive whoever comes into the space of now as a noble guest, when you allow each person to be as they are, without the separative barriers created by conceptual thinking, they begin to change. And the other person is no longer other. In that space, you are joined together as one awareness, one consciousness. Whenever you meet anyone, no matter how briefly, do you acknowledge their being by giving them your full attention? Or are you reducing them to a means to an end, a mere function or role? What is the quality of your relationship with the cashier at the supermarket, the parking attendant, the repairman, the customer? A moment of attention is enough. As you look at them or listen to them, there is an alert stillness. That is enough for something more real to emerge than the roles we usually play and identify with. All roles are part of the conditioned consciousness that is the human mind. That which emerges through the act of attention is the unconditioned, who you are in your essence underneath your name and form. You are no longer acting out a script. You become real. When that dimension emerges from within you, it also draws it forth from within the other person. Ultimately, of course, there is no other, and you're always meeting yourself.